Today's guest is my first interview ever with a management consultant. He's a Stanford MBA trained expert with over 20 years of experience helping healthcare companies grow their profits. He shares stories specific to medical practices that he helps, but they apply to any type of business you may have. We dive deep on growing your profits in ways that we haven't discussed on the show before. Check it out.
Are you looking for new ways to make your sales grow? You've tried other podcasts, but they don't seem to know. Harvest the growth potential of your product or service as we share stories and strategies that'll make your competitors nervous. Now, here's the host of the Harvest Growth Podcast, John LeClaire.
Welcome back to the show. I'm excited to be speaking with Todd McGee. Now, we've been friends for over 20 years, I think, Todd, right? A long time we've known each other and kind of have gone our separate ways and come back. I'm really excited to be speaking with you again today and really to hear a lot about your career from the past decades, but more recently on how you've started a business recently, utilizing a lot of your expertise in growing businesses. And we're going to talk about one specific type of business that you focus on, but a lot of learnings that our listeners can take really no matter what business they own, as one of your expertise is really making businesses more efficient, helping them to grow, be more profitable. So really improving businesses. I'm really excited to dive into the story, but Todd, first of all, if you could just tell us a bit about your business, essentially who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thanks, John. Yes, me and a couple, let's say, industry veterans put together a management company called Complete Allergy and Asthma. And the idea behind that was what we had seen in the industry is the allergy and asthma medical practice space is largely made up of very small to mid-sized practices. Like a large allergy practice, for example, might have 6 physicians in it. So compared to a lot of the specialties out there, this is one that is still very much a mom and pop industry. Not very consolidated. And so as a result of that, one of the things that I was able to observe over the past couple years prior to launching Complete Allergy and Asthma was the fact that with these small practices, oftentimes they were really struggling with how do we grow? Should we grow? If we're going to, should we add an additional physician? Should we move to a new location? And then on top of that, are we getting the maximum out of what we're doing today? So meaning, are we getting all the revenue that we should be entitled to for the services that we're providing? Or, are there gaps in our system? Those gaps could be anything from poor reimbursement in your insurance contracts to not necessarily capturing all the events, all of the billable events, and so on and so forth. So to summarize, we saw a need for experienced kind of high-level strategic management services and wanted to be able to provide those to these practices on a fractional basis. So rather than them hiring Todd or someone else on our team directly, they might be able to get a lot of the benefit out of us with us spending a small portion of our time and consequently for the practice, make it affordable for the practice to engage with people like us.
I think, I have a couple of family members that are physicians, and in talking with them, physicians are notorious for being, of course, very intelligent, but many of them are not experienced in running a business. They don't realize sometimes when they go into medical school, you are not just going to be a doctor, but oftentimes you're a business owner, and you got to figure out how to do the finances and really grow the business and focus on that side of it. It's not just medicine. Oftentimes, right now, you can join a practice that can be different, obviously, but there's a lot of questions in their minds of how do they really run their businesses effectively and grow them. And I think that's similar probably to a lot of our audience members, where whatever your core expertise is, right, whether you're a physician or whether you do HVAC, right, whatever it might be, you're good at the service, you're good at what you do. And on top of that, now you got to run this entire complex business. And so it's great to have resources like your company, Todd, to be able to help them out. Can you talk a little bit about what was your background and experience that obviously, this is a business you couldn't have started fresh out of school with no experience, right? You've been doing this for a long time within businesses in different ways, but maybe share with our audience where some of your expertise comes from.
Sure, thanks. Yeah. So I've worked in this specialty for almost 10 years now. I managed the largest independent allergy practice in the state of Arizona for 6 years. That included literally everything other than, telling the doctors how to be doctors, right? Changing vendors, working with insurance companies to improve our reimbursement, all of those different things, right? So it was a very hands-on role. So I did that for 6 years and then was recruited out of the company to join the largest allergy practice in the country, a group called Allergy Partners, and worked for them for 2 years, primarily focused on acquisitions as well as opening new clinics. And so what I was able to see over that 8+ years between those two positions was to see, again, kind of what these groups do well, what they don't do well, and to the point you were mentioning earlier, right? A lot of those physician owners realize that, hey, I know medicine, I know some things about business, I know how to, a lot of times they'll be pretty good at managing the medical staff, the nursing staff, for example, that works with them, but they don't really understand, the nuances of customer service. They don't necessarily understand how billing works, things like that. So having a window into a number of different acquisition candidates, you could see all of the good and the bad things that they were doing. And then with the group in Arizona, it was actually a really efficient, both in terms of patient volume as well as financially efficient practice. So I've had the opportunity to see, if you will, one of the best practices operate, and then a much broader variety of practices operate both within Allergy Partners and then with the different acquisition candidates that we've looked at. So I've kind of seen the good and the bad, and can usually fairly quickly, our team can usually help people figure out, okay, here's a few things you could do differently to ultimately improve revenue or reduce costs or both.
And really, it comes down to when you're talking about growing profits of a business, there's essentially two ways to do it, right? You either grow your revenues or you reduce your costs, or hopefully some combination of both. And I'd love to probe a little bit further on each of them, I guess. What are some common areas that you've seen to be able to help businesses, first of all, reduce their costs, right? So even keeping their existing business the same, how do you cut costs out without losing quality of service?
That's a great question. And you started with the true north on the cost side, which is we're really looking at things that are what I would describe as transparent to the customer, which in this case is the patient. So you don't want to cut back on things that are going to make their experience less satisfying or to do anything to reduce the quality of care. But for example, there are plenty of things to look at that can be substituted out, right? So for example, I doubt that it's going to make a significant impact to the quality if a practice switches from one supplier of copiers and printers to another supplier of copies and printers. But they might be able to save $10,000 a year or $20,000 a year or whatever the number is by simply making that change, because we know from our experience about what a group should be paying for those costs. And if they're paying more than that or their equipment is substandard, that's a great change. Medical supplies in many cases can be very similar, whether you're working with, one national distributor or another. In many cases, if you will, the paper that they put on the exam tables is paper, right? It doesn't make a difference, but it might make a difference in the cost. And so by being able to look on the cost side at things that are, transparent to the patient, or something more strategic, for example, maybe we do an analysis and we see that the rents are above market that they're paying for the offices that they're providing care in. And maybe because the market has changed and the commercial real estate market currently is softer, there may be some opportunities in a substandard building to take advantage of the current commercial real estate market and move to a new location, and either reduce your rent or be in an area that has higher traffic that might get more people to see, the sign on the practice, to be able to see, hey, hey, my allergies are bugging me. Let me pop into this place, right? We specifically on that, we found in Arizona when we moved from a location that was right behind a hospital in a big medical office complex, we had essentially no street visibility. And there is still very much in healthcare a retail element to it. And we moved from that location to one of the busiest street corners in Metro Phoenix. And we had 10 new patients a week just show up by seeing our sign and driving into the parking lot, right? So the move more than paid for itself just by the people walking in. So those are some examples of things you can do on the cost side that don't impact patient care, but improve the bottom line.
Yeah, and I like that last example you shared. It's not always just about lowering your costs, but making your costs more efficient or more impactful, right? So sometimes you might pay more for a better location, but if that location drives in more revenues, it can still help your profitability. And we'll talk about growth in a second. I want to probe a little bit further on a couple of things you said. One, you talked about how you've got this unique experience having been doing this for years and years, right? And seeing so many other practices. And some of our listeners, if they don't have that experience or have, know somebody that does, bring in a consultant in, et cetera. Another option for business owners is to find like businesses, right? Talk to other business owners in similar fields and, get it probed down to understand. And physicians, maybe that's a little bit tougher on because they're focused on what they do every day. But in other businesses, and that's why consultants like yourself can be so great. Other businesses, we're often open books, right? To work with others. We're all trying to help each other in some ways if you're sometimes not a direct competitor, but talk to others to find out what those norms are in terms of costs and realize, maybe I shouldn't be paying so much for whatever it might be. The other thing too, I think that we've discovered in our business over the years is sometimes you need to find the costs. Like we have costs that we find in our business that may have been running some software, for example, that we haven't even used for months. Kind of forgot we had it. So it's just taking the time to analyze costs and realize that they're there. And like you said, then analyze, are they helping your business? Can they be replaced? Can they be lowered? Sometimes it's just, man, do you use it at all? Or is it even worth it?
That reminds me of a great example. We, phone technology has changed greatly over the past years, right? And the group I was managing in Arizona, we had some old, I'll call them landline type lines that fundamentally we weren't using. And, the bill was just getting paid, and these were not insignificant bills. And we finally we brought someone in that was an expert on kind of managed IT services and things like that. And they're looking at it and they're like, well, now that we're on this new phone system, you don't even need those lines. So what you're paying for your internet is now going to effectively, replace the cost of your phones. And the savings, I'm not exaggerating, this was 5 locations, but the savings was somewhere around $50,000 a year of just essentially lines that had become redundant, that if you're not paying attention to, or you don't understand the nuance of your shift from a landline phone to a VoIP phone, you could miss, right? And so having learned that lesson, that would be one of the first things that we would look at, is to understand their operations in some detail in certain kind of high value areas, such as communications, that things can just get missed. And it's a shame for a practice to keep spending that money when they don't need to.
Yeah. And, I've discovered a few of those over the years, and it's always embarrassing. I think like, oh, how did I not catch this? But I'd rather deal with the embarrassment than to continue to pay these costs that really aren't helping drive the business forward, let's now shift it to talk a little bit more about the growth side. So we talked about costs and really growing your profitability by reducing or making your costs more efficient. What about the growth side? What have you seen have been some levers to help businesses really grow their revenues?
Yeah, sure. So starting with what I would call the simpler and moving to the complex. So some of the simpler ones, when I say simple, what I mean is sort of along the lines of what we were talking about on the cost side. These are things that the practice doesn't necessarily need to do anything different than what they're doing today to capture this revenue. So what we've seen firsthand dozens of times is that practices have no idea how to negotiate insurance contracts. So, most of the reimbursement for most medical practices, and certainly allergy and asthma practices, comes from what's called commercial insurance. So the United Healthcares, the Blue Crosses, the Cignas of the world, and for the population below the Medicare age, right? And not on Medicaid. And so for most allergy practices, that'll be 75 to 90% of their revenue will come from those sources. And it's not uncommon. We're working with a group in Pennsylvania today that had not negotiated their insurance contracts in over 10 years. And despite the fact that obviously your costs have gone up, and particularly from COVID and beyond, on the medical side, costs have gone up, I'd say comfortably 50% over the past 5 years of running an allergy practice. And if you haven't renegotiated your insurance contracts, well, your reimbursement is unlikely to have changed. Some of them do reset on their own. They're indexed to different things, but many of them won't. And so, by going in there and showing them how to do the work and then actually doing the work for them to initiate those discussions, to do the analysis to see how bad the problem is, then initiate those discussions with the insurance companies, get the insurance companies to come to the table, which is not easy for these small businesses, and at least get what we can, even if it's a few percent a year. It's a few percent of revenue on every patient that they see with no incremental cost increase, right? And so it's essentially a 100% profit move. Another one that's kind of related to that is whatever we should be getting paid versus what we're actually getting paid. And that involves taking a look at what they call the fee schedule, which would be, if you come in to do allergy skin testing, we should be paid, let's just say $5 per scratch when a scratch is put on the patient's back. Well, is the insurance company actually paying the $5 that they're contracted to pay per scratch? Are they paying that, but 10% of the claims are being denied and not being worked effectively? And so net, they're paying the equivalent of $4.50 per scratch, right? And so what can we do to get that $4.50 closer to $5? Sometimes it's documentation changes by the clinicians. Sometimes it's just grunt work of going back and arguing with sending medical records in, sending documentation, and kind of arguing, if you will, through paper with the insurance companies to claw back as much of that 50 cents per scratch that you just lost. So those are the places that we start. And then on the the longer term basis, then we're looking at things like, okay, is it taking too long for new patients to get an appointment? Allergy and asthma is a particularly interesting field in that a lot of times allergies, for example, will be seasonal. And so when certain ragweed is in bloom, it may be a 6-week period that you've got to get those new patients in, because if it takes you 8 weeks to get them in and their symptoms resolve, well, they're not going to come in and see you. But if you could get them in next week when they call and they're miserable, they're much more likely to become a new patient. They're much more likely to receive the treatment they need at the time and get started on the therapies that the physician recommends at that time. And then they become a patient, potentially for life, or if not for a number of years, right? So there's a time sensitivity to a lot of the symptoms that an allergy or an asthma patient are facing. And so getting them in quickly is one of the most important things you can possibly do, because new patients are the lifeblood of any medical practice and generally any business. And so, if the patient's miserable and you can't get them into your practice, they're going to go somewhere else. And once they go somewhere else, you've lost them.
Yeah, I think you raised a couple of things that I think are really helpful for really any kind of business. One, and I'll just maybe change the way it was worded, because if we're not talking about a medical practice, for example, it's about, I think, raising prices, right? Raising the revenue per customer. And that could be charging more, whether that's going through insurance companies, or that's raising the rates to your customer if they pay directly, or is it increasing collections, right? So making sure every business has difficulty at times for collections, and there's 1,000 ways to do that, right? One of which is making payments easier, right? Getting it on credit. If it's, obviously with medical practice, easy to deal with insurance, right? But many other businesses may have the ability to pay via credit card or online invoicing. It's funny, my business, we just got paid via check a couple of weeks ago. And I told the client, I'm like, are you sure? Like, I don't think I've gotten a check in the mail for 5 years. Like, nobody pays that way. And it felt so slow, right? Like, it took 2 weeks to get it, and deposit it. I'm like, what do I even do with this, right? So many ways have gotten efficient. Unfortunately, the insurance industry is still, way behind. But when we get paid directly by our customers, it does make it more efficient, easier. And the more ways you can accept payment for a lot of businesses can really help with that too. And I love how you talked about being available, right? So being, whatever that means for any individual business, but being ready when your customer needs you, right? And sometimes that means it may mean growing your staff during high seasons, right? So they're not waiting for sometimes hours, right? You could lose a customer in hours, let alone weeks, right? So depending on what the business might be, but really being available can make a huge difference. So often on this podcast and in our business, we talk about growth as getting more customers, right? That's what my business is. We do video marketing to bring more customers, more patients, whatever it might be, into the business. And that's a big part of growth. I love that you talked about another side of it, right? It's collections. It's about getting more out of each customer. It's about being more efficient on cost. There's a lot of ways really to tackle that growth. So I think this has been helpful to go in a little different direction than we normally do. Well, Todd, go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick. Yeah. Another example of that, when you talked about kind of that sense of urgency, is a lot of practices will do a great job leveraging what's commonly referred to now as advanced practice providers. So these would be nurse practitioners, physician assistants in our business. And where they can be really valuable in a practice, they can do lots of things. And in many cases, they can provide primary care the same way a physician can. But one of the specific things that the best practices and the best locations I've seen do is they'll leverage those APPs, advanced practice providers, for what I would call that acute urgent visit, right? So almost like an urgent care type of a scenario. So they might keep 2 or 4 appointments on their schedule open every day for that person that calls in this morning and says, hey, I was up camping all weekend and now my asthma's flaring up because they've been sitting out in the woods and around campfires and whatever is going on. And they just need to be seen today, right? And so if you can be that hero today by getting them in and getting them some care and making sure that they're going to stay out of the urgent care and out of the ER, that's the stickiness of that relationship becomes a lot stronger. So just one last kind of thing to add on as far as the growth side.
Absolutely. And are there any resources that you'd recommend to our audience that have been helpful for your business?
Yeah. When I got in, the doctors I was working for suggested and funded for me to go to 2 different conferences. One is by the American College of Asthma, Allergy, and Immunology. And we're so creative in our specialty that the other one is called the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. But they put on programs. I actually participate with the college version of the practice management program. And that one's done in October and November. And it's a 1-day session. And physicians will attend, but a lot of practice managers will show up or administrators. And we'll cover everything from how to bill to dealing with employee morale issues to compliance issues to HR issues. So kind of all of those business areas that these are businesses, right? So all these business areas that the practice needs to cover, you can go and get a one day drink from the fire hose, crash course on a number of topics, all of which will be relevant to running a practice. And the Academy, they do a similar program in the summer. It was actually in Denver just a couple of weeks ago. And so those are great programs. That one's a 2 or 3 day program, a longer program, but they're both excellent. And whether you're new to the specialty, new to being a practice manager or something like that, as a new physician, as a new business owner in the specialty, and I'm sure the other specialties have similar programs. So that would be my recommendation for anyone cutting their teeth in the industry. Yeah.
And conferences can be so helpful in virtually any industry. The nice thing about them is they're very, as you're saying, very specialized, right? You can't, or I shouldn't say you can't. There aren't books for every specific thing, right? That we need to learn in an asthma and allergy practice, for example. There's not going to be a lot of massive marketing or business books that teach you everything you need to know because it's so specialized. But conferences exist in almost every field, and getting together with other people that are going through the same problems, looking for the same growth opportunities that you are, can make a huge difference because they're so specialized. So, whatever in our industry our listeners might be in, look for these conferences, look for opportunities to really get out there and learn from others in your field. Todd, is there anything I didn't ask you that you think could be helpful for our audience?
I think we covered a lot. I hope it was helpful. And no, I think, if you're interested in learning more about us, you can go to our website, which is just breathecomplete.com. And right on the front page, on the home page, we've got a couple little widgets that if you want to put some data in from your practice, we can provide you some very specific feedback at no cost to give you a taste of the type of work that we can do and hopefully provide help to a lot of the practices out there that are trying to figure out, okay, how do I get a little more out of what we're doing?
Well, thank you. And I do encourage our listeners, please check out their website, breathecomplete.com, as Todd said. It's in our show notes as well. So if you're driving, go check out the show notes when you get back to your computer as well. And also, did you know you can meet with a member of my team absolutely free for a 30-minute strategy consultation? We've launched and grown hundreds of products and businesses since 2007 and learned some of our strategies while growing OxyClean back in the Billy Mays days. We're here to help. So please go to harvestgrowth.com and set up a call if you'd like to discuss further.